We go. 3, 2, 1. Hi guys, my name is Danika Worthington. I am the presentation editor at The Sun. I am co-moderating this with lovely Dana Coffield over here. We only have one little spot here, so I am in charge, not Dana. Sorry about that.
First time ever.
I know. So we're gonna start this out pretty simple, and we're gonna ask each of our panelists. We're gonna start with Dana and then go our way that way to introduce themselves and then say the last great meal they had in Colorado.
I'll go. So I'm Dana Coffield, and oops, sorry, I have to remember this. I was going to give this instruction as well. Speak into the mic. I'm Dana Coffield. I'm a founder and co-editor at the Colorado Sun. In my past lives, I had experience as a food editor and food writer, and so I've always been kind of interested. But as I told our panelists earlier in the week, I haven't left my house in 3 years. So when we were trying to figure out interesting things we could talk about at the symposium, we wondered, how do you find a decent place to have a meal? In my case, the most recent good thing I ate was a birria taco at a food truck that was parked in the parking lot of Liquid Mechanics in Lafayette.
Hi, I'm Josie Sexton. I do not work in food media anymore, but most recently I was the food writer at the Denver Post, and before that I was the editor of Eater Denver. And I got started writing about food, kind of funny, up in Fort Collins, where I was more focused on beer writing when I first moved to Colorado. The last great, I'll say a dish I had in Colorado was in August, which is a great time to go to restaurants in Colorado. And my husband and I live near Potager in Capitol Hill, and it's been around for more than 20 years now, so we like to support our neighborhood restaurant. We had a really lovely beet and tomato salad, and I just order everything with tomatoes in August and into September, and I think a salad is a really overlooked menu item usually, so when restaurants do it well, I go for their salads.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ethan. I'm the assistant food editor at 5280 Magazine. Yeah, I mean, that's my short and sweet resume, and I will say that I live kind of in Capitol Hill, near Cheeseman Park, and there's a new sandwich place on Colfax called Porchetta House. They have great porchetta, surprisingly, and there was a al pastor porchetta sandwich, and I'll say that that was a really solid meal.
Hey everybody, I'm Kip. I host a podcast here in town called Stolen Appetit, where I get high and review restaurants. I have a lot better job than everybody else here today. The last great meal would be kind of hard to decipher. Last night I was lucky enough to catch a net just before closing, and I think everyone that's had that opportunity to eat there in Aurora can say that it slaps. A little mussel frites and a hamburger to go, can't beat it with a stick. Prior to that, I had a place called Jacques, which just opened in Lohi. It's a French restaurant from Chef Nick over there at Brasserie Brixton. It's his next iteration. That was a delightful meal as well, and I mean, we could do this for hours. I just love food. I need to get that birria taco spot of yours. But I'm excited to be here. Thank y'all for including me, and let's eat well.
And we can write down these recommendations and send them to you.
Awesome. All right, so we'll have questions at the end.
It's called Rev Mex.
Dana, I'm talking. We'll have a conversation at the end to ask questions. But then something we kind of want to start out pretty simple. Obviously, you guys are probably inundated with press releases. But setting that aside, if you're here and you're trying to find a new restaurant, a new solid place to go, how do you guys do it? What are the breadcrumbs you find to find that next restaurant?
I don't get, not me now.
Well, I'll just start by saying that exploring, I think, is still the #1 way that probably any of us would like to find a restaurant, is coming across it ourselves by going out into new places and feeling like you've discovered something that you can tell your friends about or your readers. There's a lot of, it can be an echo chamber in the food writing world and food media, because the way that a lot of publications have to work now is that if they see a story performing well on a competitor's website, they will try to think of a way to do it themselves. And so what that means is that, we'll hear about restaurants from our fellow writers, from other people in the industry, and we'll end up kind of like all circling around and talking about those restaurants. And these two do a great job, I know, of getting out of that habit. And I will say that taking advice from other people in the industry, from people that also review restaurants or write about restaurants, can be a double-edged sword. One time, Kip and I were at the same restaurant on the Western Slope, and we were both celebrating. It was his girlfriend's birthday, it was my birthday, and we had taken these road trips individually and happened to be at the same restaurant, all because someone else in the Denver food writing community and some others, like again, a few people started writing about it all of a sudden. We go there and we had completely different, wildly different experiences on the same night, to the point where Kip had to share his bread with our table because they were out of just about everything on the menu by the time we got there. And I had written in, like, it's my birthday, we're coming. And they're like, we're out of the vegetarian option, we're out of the bread, which we're known for. So Kip was the best service that we had at that restaurant that night. And fun fact, less than a year later, that restaurant was nominated for a James Beard Award in the hospitality category. So it just goes to show you that you have to fact check, verify, or just experience for yourself a place that you've heard great rave things about or terrible things about, because often the experience can change on a nightly, hourly, by-the-minute basis.
It was awesome bread. I just want to hammer that out. And I kind of want to harp on what she said. I like to lean on trusted resources. One thing, we have on social media and things of that nature, but what we're trying to do is sort the message from the noise. There's a lot of people that are really good at editing content, but they don't know anything about food. So while they may have all these likes and views and popular posts, you need to find those trusted resources like Ethan and once Josie in the scene before she left for doing the other things when she was in the food game. It's finding folks that you can trust. So like if someone tells you to go to a restaurant and then it validates that claim, or if it's the exact opposite, you're like, why would I go back to that well? And so I think the objective is to probably, I hate to say this because my company's based off of it, but social media is kind of a tough way to use that as a gauge for what's a good restaurant, because anybody can get 500,000 views, myself included, despite if the food is good or not. So if we're using clicks and likes to dictate if a restaurant is worthy of visiting, then we've already lost the battle. So I think the answer is to look for trusted resources, those that have validated backgrounds and have actual platforms that they work in. So I'd say don't use Instagram to validate if this restaurant is worthy or not, and maybe don't leave 1-star Yelp reviews even if you had a bad experience, because that oftentimes is not the full picture, as Josie mentioned. Again, that bread was awesome.
I would also use that same because I'm old. Back in the olden days, we used to have actual food critics that worked at the newspapers, right? And one of them who worked for Westward, Rocky Mountain News, and the Denver Post was Kyle Wagner. She's an awesome writer. She and I could not have different tastes in our mouths, but I knew after going places that she went to how to understand what she was talking about and know whether the food was going to be appealing to me, even though some of the stuff that she was like, oh, the bomb, I was like, ooh, about. And so it does pay to find these trusted sources, try a few places that they have recommended and see if it works for you or not.
I would want to, well, first, I feel very flattered to be called a trusted resource. That's not usually something that I get called. But I would say, at least in terms of the local area, really so much good food is popping up in the suburbs and Aurora, and really just not Denver proper. I mean, there's awesome food coming around as well, but I think keep your eyes out for interesting opens as they sort of are floating around in the digital land, but it's hilarious. You could just drive through Westminster and hit up 5 amazing spots, you know what I mean? And it's worth sort of venturing. That's what I would say is that where you'll find new stuff.
Well, so something you guys were talking about, and we had previously when we met to talk, spoiler alert, we met before this, to talk about this. What is the role of media in these places? Because sometimes you really love this place, and then you write about it, and then they are not prepared for that, and they get swamped. So how do you guys what do you think the role of media is with this, and how do you kind of balance that?
Oh, I have so many thoughts about that. So I guess I'll just go first. I think that there is a pantheon of like media or like various forms of discussion around any given restaurant. There's the traditional news outlets that I work for, Josie's worked for, and stuff like that. There's social media, as we already talked about. There's influencers. There's Yelp and Google reviews. There's everything, and I think you, as you said, like figure out your trusted resource. Like figure out who you care about, and like I would say, with big awards coming to town, as we might know about with Michelin, it is very valid that like certain restaurants can get like really slammed, and then either hopefully they don't close, but then you'll see like a shit ton of Google reviews that are like, this place sucked, I can't believe they got a star, and like I would say like take all of those things with a grain of salt. Take the award with a grain of salt, take those bad reviews with a grain of salt, like take everything with a grain of salt, but then have all the grains of salt, if that makes sense.
You're talking about a lived recent experience too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And maybe you don't have to name names, but maybe
there was a recent restaurant that got recognition from the New York Times. Woot woot, so slay. But when I went right after they got the award, just on my own, like I took my sister there. Our food took like over an hour, and we asked the waiter, and she was like, it's because of this like award. Like we totally are not prepared for like the current volumes that we are getting, and they comped the meal, by the way, so they were very nice about it. But it was these sort of big like recognitions can be really like stressful.
And maybe we could talk a little bit more about that maybe explain. Michelin came and awarded stars in Colorado for the first time, awarded green stars for good green restaurants, so that's a whole another 10, I think 8, or it makes a total of 8, right? The five stars plus 3 green stars, 2 went to restaurants that got stars, and then a whole bunch that just got a Michelin mention. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the airport at DIA, and I'm like, hey, one of the restaurants in here has a Michelin mention. And I went there, and it was packed. So, how should we manage expectations going forward now that we have been noticed?
I do just want to say that one of the most important things I think people writing about food and restaurants can do is find places that haven't been talked about and interview their owners and hear their stories and then share that with the community so that we aren't just echo chambers of each other. So my favorite stories have always been those like profiles or spotlights on small business owners. Usually they just have one business, and the thing that does come along with that is that sometimes if for some reason that story gets a lot of traction, a lot of readership, and people go there, they can have bad experiences like we're talking about, or have to wait an hour for their food. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Michelin coming to Colorado, choosing Colorado as one of 7 states in the US that has Michelin stars is a huge tourism draw now all of a sudden. And Kip and I were talking about this, it's too early to tell because it was just a few weeks ago that the stars were awarded. But I think all of us will be checking in with Colorado tourism and with these restaurants a year from now to know like how has this, when it comes to dollars and tourism numbers and the restaurants' bottom lines, how are they doing after that? And that'll be a lot of interesting stories to tell from that.
I couldn't agree more with both of what they said. I think there's a level of tempering those expectations because maybe, whatever your expectation of a Michelin star dining experience may be is not necessarily the cultural, expectations of that restaurant. We often see that when you go to other countries or other communities, things operate differently. So what you may have become accustomed to in Colorado dining, it's going to be a little bit different the next time you try to get into Bruto or Wolf's Taylor. You're gonna be like, I waited 90 days for this reservation. This better be the best darn meal I've ever had. We need to kind of let's keep ourselves a little bit more even keel in that aspect. But I spoke with Natasha Hess, who she got a Michelin Bib Gourmand nod for her restaurant Ginger Pig just recently, and we're talking about Tuesdays and Wednesdays when oftentimes it would just be takeout only, and she's now having like a 1 in 1 out. And I think if you're okay with just like, you know, waiting, like having that level of expectation, don't be like, oh, why am I not going to have like my food in 5 seconds? We're going to have to all adjust to that, because it's going to take us about a year before any of us can get into Frosca or Bruto or Wolf's Taylor anymore. But I think that's going to be the name of the game, is give them a little grace, because they're probably dealing with a little bit more than they ever expected. I think maybe some folks like Bobby and them may have expected some of these, but the smaller restaurants like your Beckons and your Brutos and even your AJ's Pit Barbecue, who is in that camp, I think we need to give them a little time to kind of get all their ducks in a row and kind of get their stuff sorted. So I'm just going to temper my expectations. I'm not going to hold any feet to the fire, I suppose, is my goal.
I'm going to respond a little bit, because I have a follow-up question, which is that how do we expect people, as we're saying here, to temper expectations for a place if they're waiting so long to get in, or if they're driving into Denver or Aspen or any of these places that have received Michelin recognition, and they're about to fork over what is now an insane amount of money for a restaurant. And I'm just, making a leading question here, because I also think what you're saying is true, and I think the prices are now just reflecting inflation and the cost of living and what restaurants are being demanded to pay of their workers. All really good stuff. But so how do you manage expectations at the same time that like a meal is more expensive than it's ever been, which is what.
And you're exactly right, but I think we factor in those other things. Like we factor in inflation, and we've raised, the minimum wage both in Colorado, but most restaurants are trying to provide living wages, healthcare, insurance, and things of that nature for their staff. So I've kind of had to accept that, and it doesn't mean that I'm taking less off the tip. I think more expectation would be like, oh, it took me 90 days to get this reservation. I have no doubt that Bobby and Carlin and the teams over there will not make every experience worthwhile. I just think it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for maybe those that weren't coming from that expertise. So the Bib Gourmands and that fast casual Chinese restaurant I just mentioned, that's a little bit unexpected. If you were there 2 weeks ago and just doing takeout and it took 15 minutes and now it's 45 minutes or an hour, I'm giving them a little bit of grace. But in those high dollar ones, I think service, the vibe, and the same thing that the Michelin looks for are the same things that we'll start looking for. So maybe not necessarily the price point, but at the same time, like, was the juice worth the squeeze? And when you think about what they're doing with the products and like fermentation from Kelly Whitaker and growing their own grains, like the juice is worth the squeeze, even if it took me, there was a 20 extra minute lag time, or it took me an extra month to get that reservation. I get that the buzz is building. So that's a personal talk I'm having to have myself. It's like $200 for Wolf's Taylor for you by yourself with cocktails would be considered steep, and it should be considered steep. But at the same time, when you know and you're starting to learn about what goes into all of this, and included a bottle of wine marked up, but like the process of the food, like it kind of makes it it's worthwhile, and you can understand it. So I'm trying to empathize is my number one goal, and give them a little bit. And then if their service still sucks in a year, then we'll come back here and we'll berate the shit out of it. Sorry for my language. I apologize. I was just kidding.
No. Well, I'm going to put Josie on the spot really quickly, because the whole reason we're doing this is we're like, okay, it's really hard to find like affordable like food right now. I know I've had to cut back on it doesn't matter. But Josie, you're like wanted to push back against the theme of like, how do you find affordable housing? Can you go on your little diatribe, please? Sorry, affordable food.
So I think housing and food should all be affordable. That's an overall goal, I think, across the board. I think as a society and a culture, we go out to eat too much, and I'm part of this problem. I grew up in the Midwest, and and not that the Midwest matters, but I just, for background. And at a young age, I started going out to meals at, fast food places and then fast casual places. And it's just been the way things are for a really long time. And now, especially since the pandemic, we've reached this kind of reckoning moment in restaurants, and it happened in a lot of different industries. But part of the reckoning was restaurant owners and these big companies aren't paying their employees enough to live off of, especially in the bigger cities. The working conditions are less than ideal. We had a lot of attention with the Me Too movement to restaurant kitchens. And I think in general, the cost of running a restaurant, paying employees well, and serving food that's supporting the local community of farmers and more should be reflected on menus. And I was just listening to a podcast about what happens with Netflix and the monthly subscription costs now that the writers' strike has ended and the writers are going to be getting their fair pay. The same thing that's going to happen to Netflix is happening across restaurants, and that's the price for people who are enjoying those services is going to go up. And as a result, we can make the decision if we want to support them and how often we want to support them. And the same thing has happened with newspapers. We've had to learn to pay for news. So I do think the price needs to be reflected for the consumer so that the consumer can have a real picture of what it costs to go into putting these products out into the world.
It's funny to hear a former food writer say, we should probably go out to restaurants less.
That's why I'm no longer a food writer. I'm just kidding.
I totally agree with Josie. I do think that probably eating out less is good for us. And also Colorado, I know I've been trying to find this statistic for like months. There's something crazy about how Colorado was like the second state, like most state to bounce back in terms of dining after COVID. Like people, I don't quote me on that literally, but like it really, people love to eat out here. What I would say in terms of affordable food is, affordable food isn't the dollar amount. Affordable food is how much you're paying and how much joy and contentment that you're getting in return. And the work that we need to do as consumers is figure out for us individually, what do we value? Restaurants are providing us a service, and we can't have every single, thing maxed out every single time, right? Some people really value really attentive service. For me, I love going out to like a lot of the restaurants on Havana Street in Aurora, and I will say a lot of the service is pretty like, I'm gonna take your order and not care about you anymore, and that's until you gave me my money. You're like, you my money, and like I'm really happy with that. I grew up in that sort of environment. A lot of Chinese restaurants are like that, I feel like, but I pay for the flavor. That's what I want to pay for. And so I think as consumers, asking ourselves that question of like, okay, am I here for really creative, crazy food? And yeah, that means that like Bruto's super worth it, or it's, you just want to have like a nice homey thing, but you want somebody to like take care of you for like 2 hours. Like that's, I think, the key to finding what's affordable to ourselves.
I just drive down Federal. I am anti $6 tacos, which we're seeing a lot because of commercial real estate causing businesses, the city's permitting and making people pay for, rent for 8 months before they can actually open their restaurant doors. And so they have to charge more in addition to all the things we previously stated. So I like to drive down Federal. I think that you get the most authentic flavor there, and I think he nailed it on the head. Like, what do you want to be paying for? I don't give a shit if there's a chandelier in a restaurant. I want quality flavor. I want to learn about someone's culture through their cuisine. I look for authenticism, and so that's kind of what I'm going for. So when the bang is worth the buck, I love going to Bruto like once a quarter or maybe once every year, something along those lines. But I'll hit Federal twice a week, whether it be for taco trucks that are authentically $2 and you kind of can see why they're $2. It's, no frills. You sit on the curb and you enjoy them. Or doing just something like, the Chinese food down there is much cheaper than daughter Thai downtown, and you can see why when you step into one or the other. But like Ethan said, I like to pay for that authentic flair of the food, and so I think that's a great way to look at it. And I'm going to start probably pivoting how I look at it a little bit more because of that. That's a great call. Federal.
Well, like speaking of this kind of like specifics a little bit, what in Denver food-wise do you guys think Denver does, or metro area, does really well? Like, what do you think it's like, oh, Denver really nails this? And it's okay if you don't think there's necessarily something. Sorry, I don't mean to be mean.
You want me to go first?
Well, let's the background this, because all of Danika's friends say there's no good food in Colorado. So,
I know, okay, here's the
right?
thing. Let me get some context.
Okay.
So, I'm from Phoenix originally, which, if you don't know this, it's really surprising, is an underrated food scene. There's an amazing food scene in Phoenix, especially if, like, it's affordable, you just have 20 bucks, you can get a lot of really great food. So, having a lot of Arizona expats coming out here, everyone's like, where's all the good food? There's no good food here. And so that's kind of where this was inspired by.
I think we're doing really well in using the resources that are around us. I know I mentioned earlier Kelly Whitaker, who picked up those stars from the Michelin Guide, which would slam dunk, no offense to your friends, but I'm going to trust these judges a little bit more. 5 stars in addition to 4 more green ones, 9 bibs. I mean, we dunked on Florida and what they did in their first year. So no offense to your friends there. I think we're doing a lot with what we're given here. You know, we have a lot of farm here to the east, to the north. We have a lot of cattle folks around in the region. Even our chicken wing spots, a lot of them are turning away from using, no offense, Cisco or whatever the other one, Shamrock, U.S. Foods. But we're seeing more of them use locally sourced, whether it's the smaller birds out in Nebraska, or if it's just, you know, the nice restaurants using trout from our own, you know, creeks and rivers. I think that's pretty cool. I grew up in Mississippi where all we had, and a little bit of Louisiana, where it was either the Gulf or fast food. And so, like, using what you have around you, and then I see that we're kind of dialing it in. I think we're seeing more chefs get more comfortable with the local cuisine and using grains and things of that nature in our backyard. So I'm excited about the future. I think the Michelin brings just the same as cannabis probably did about 12 years ago. With a little bit more legalization came more young people and money, brought more chefs that wanted to do their thing here and also ski on the weekdays. I think we're going to see more chefs that are like, I could get a star in Colorado. I would love to work in Aspen and Vail, or, you know, maybe Crested Butte or Steamboat joins the party or something of that nature. So I think, you know, there's a lot of positive things going on, and I think a lot of it's using the resources around us, and maybe we can eliminate some of those larger inflated costs like, you know, big beef and things of that nature going down the road. That's just my 2 cents.
I'll second what Kip said about the local food is definitely obviously something that we got recognized for a lot recently, but I would say something that I hope doesn't change because of Michelin and other sort of things that have of that nature is, I feel like I've heard from chefs and restaurant owners that Denver's food scene has sort of the luxury of not being as competitive or as cutthroat as some other major cities. And I think that's a really positive thing for the community and supportive, not only of just like, you know, people's mental health and like having sustainable like living, you know, like just people wanting to enter the industry here because it's like not gonna kill them. But I would also say it provides for more experimentation and like progress because people feel like they don't have to necessarily cater just to exactly what will make them the most money because that's the only way that they can survive. I think that hopefully here there's just a little bit more of that like community aspect that I would say that at least on the chef's side is something that they seem to feel, and I hope that we as diners also get to feel that because you know, it's like I feel like every time we go to a restaurant, it's like we're participating in this little thing of like, oh my God, we're eating out, and you're doing it for me, and like, I don't know. I that's why I delight in it. You know, that's why I did this job. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't change.
I just have a few really specific examples of what Colorado does well, or Denver specifically. I think sandwiches. Is it fast casual? Because we have so many fast casual restaurants. I eat a snarf sandwich, and the order is, this is the pro order, is a veggie with bacon on it. And that's my go-to for Red Rocks. Why? No, it's a great. Also at Bon and Butter, which is in Aurora, they do a great banh mi, and they're like a third generation restaurant owners over there. Look, Kip, I love a snarf sandwich.
I thought you were saying prime ribs. So I was like, yeah, the prime ribs immaculate. Not veggie at bacon.
The other thing from what Kip was talking about was these restaurant owners, young up-and-coming chefs that have moved back to Denver, are part of the wave of people coming from San Francisco and New York and Phoenix even.
You're like Phoenix,
We'll
maybe.
welcome all of them. Well, you know, one of the exciting parts of that is that you get a couple like Anthony and Anna Nguyen, who open Sapsua, which is a modern Vietnamese restaurant, and they came from working in some of the best kitchens in San Francisco, but wanted to move home to where Anna's family is during the pandemic. And now, all of a sudden, we have 2 rising star chefs from the coast who have come back, and it's a wonderful story, and their food is also really exciting and cool. And so we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, I think, moving forward. And after Michelin, too, I think, also.
Well, and speaking of Michelin and what Kip was talking about, so this idea that like young people or these other chefs might be coming in, do you think the effect that we'll see is mainly on that top tier, like high end, or do you think it's gonna like the whole food scene gonna be impacted by that?
I think what we're going to see is kind of a pivot in how the rest of the community sees the food scene. And so with that will spur more folks going into the industry as a profession and seeing it not as a bartender as only a job, or being a sous chef is only a job, but these are careers that you can have. You can obviously work your way up just as you can in any other profession or any other field, but you'll also be garnering large accolades. And what we may see is Michael Diaz de Leon, who was a James Beard finalist and the chef at Bruto, like he may go out there and spread that word to other folks and inspire more people to become chefs. And folks that maybe didn't come from the culinary background, someone like your Natasha Hesses, or even like Dana Rodriguez, who's just done a lot in the media recently. I think it's going to shine a great light on the industry and how it can be a profession that can take you to great heights, that can show you the world and pay for you to have a family, live here in Denver, maybe not because it's brutally expensive, but just outside of Denver. Or hang out with me. I'm in Arvada. It's wonderful. Things like that. So I think that's one part that we'll see, is that it'll show that it's a sustainable career rather than just a job while you're in college or after college, or working the night shift is actually a viable option rather than just like biding or whatever your time, I don't know what the verb is, or the verb, biding your time, waiting for, a degree to cash. You can make more money working in a kitchen than in, a lot of fields these days. Shout out to those that have sports media degrees. So, yeah.
I didn't know that you were from Arvada. I will say, at 5280, we do an annual 25 best restaurants list. And I think it comes out online today, so you can look at it now. Ooh. But one of our new additions is Stone Cellar Bistro in Arvada. And that as an example of how things are spreading out, and that it's not just localized to downtown or Cherry Creek anymore. Like there's really so much awesome food in like the metro area now. In terms of what things might be coming in, it's funny, I'm a recent transplant, and so I've been inundated on social media at least with like a lot of, feelings that maybe I shouldn't be moving here, but I moved here for my job, so it's not my fault. But there will be people coming. There definitely will be. I remember hearing about it even before the Michelin thing was like really super formally going. Like there was already, I've heard about whispers from other big names outside of this area that are planning to come here.
What's the motivation?
I think it's just like, people might think of this as like an untapped market, or a relatively not like saturated, you know?
Have you heard Cowtown applied to Denver?
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's interesting because that still persists.
Yeah. Even though I feel like it's like no longer, at least money-wise, cost of living-wise, it's not. But yeah, people are coming, and there will be change on the food scene. And I think we have to be ready for it. I don't think we have much control over who decides, who with the big bucks comes in, you know? I would say if we want to be attentive, I think the long history of immigrant-owned restaurants here is probably the thing that I care more about. Like those people that are always coming in and always opening restaurants because that is how they can make their living. That's like the version of that I like love paying attention to.
So are you seeing that in Colorado cuisine? For a while, we were pretty excited about the amount of African cuisine that was available in Aurora. Are you seeing any influences from these next waves of migrants that have come in from Afghanistan, Venezuela, that kind of stuff? I mean, Venezuela is still a little new for us, but...
I mean, oh my gosh, yes. Like I think it's also, you have to look at like the food trucks and like the smaller businesses to really know, because actually I'm currently working on a pretty long African food thing right now, and it's crazy because there's this like really rich history of Ethiopian restaurants in the area, because there's been a very substantial Ethiopian population here for decades. But as we've seen sort of other immigrant groups from Africa pop up, you see like this history of like, oh, now there's like a couple Somali restaurants, or now there's like 2 Kenyan food trucks in the town. Like you see like it is very easy actually to track immigration through food. Like that is so easy. And like, I think it's exciting, food trucks especially right now, because even though it's very, very, very expensive to like start one, a lot of people use that as a stepping stone to start a business, and
that's how Ginger Pig started, right?
Oh yeah,
Up in Lafayette.
So many people, yeah.
Well, Ethan, while you have the mic, will you quickly explain to people your dumpling obsession?
Oh boy, oh my gosh. Who likes dumplings in the room? That's a lot of hands. Nice. I love dumplings. I grew up eating them all the time. You know, my parents, my grandparents, they were making them. Get some audience participation going. If you don't like dumplings, I implore you to explore, because I think my main sort of shtick. So I write a monthly dumpling column on our website. It's called In the Fold. Pause for. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. It's a great pun. It's a great pun that my boss came up with, so I actually cannot take any of that. There's a lot of new dumpling restaurants opening. Yuan Wonton is a big name that just sort of transitioned from a food truck to a brick and mortar just now. But what I will also say is that dumplings are not just one thing. I grew up with Chinese dumplings, but I got asked this by y'all recently, and I would say like my favorite dumpling that I've eaten recently are the pierogies from Easy Vegan. They are so good, and like those are dumplings. Those are absolutely dumplings, and people call gnocchi dumplings, and people call all these different things dumplings, and I think it's this thing that sort of can unite a lot of different cultures and communities, but also you get to see like. You would never fill a dumpling wrapper with potatoes in China. That's bonkers. And like respect for like Polish and like Russian people for like doing that. Love that. I love it. So that's sort of what I think at the moment is like there's a lot of new movement going on, and also it's like sort of, I hope it's a little lens into how like food connects us all in different ways.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna go to audience questions soon, but before we do, can you guys say, what was I going to ask you guys? Oh, yeah. If you're taking us all out to dinner, no budget, anywhere in the general Colorado area, where are you taking us? I'm
going to go to Bramble and Hare in Boulder because it got the Green Star for sustainability, but because I love the idea that Chef Eric Skokin tries to grow almost everything that he serves on that menu, and I'm sort of obsessed to see how the seasons or a bad growing season influences what he's able to do. Bramble and hair.
Bramble and hair.
And everyone who attended this conference is getting a personalized recommendation list of restaurants from us that I think Danika offered to put together.
Oh.
So. I'd love to take you all, or how many of us could fit, to Beacon in 5 Points. I got to go there for the opening when they did a media dinner, and otherwise I cannot afford it. It's probably like pushing $200 a person, so that's like the huge anniversary meal. Maybe it's like $150 a person. It's like the milestone anniversary meal. Full stop. I don't know what else it would be for. And you sit around the chefs working in the center, and you're kind of shaped in a U around them, and then they serve you the dishes and they explain to you. And it's the only thing still, I think, that we have in Denver that takes that format, unless I'm missing. It kind of has a sushi counter, omakase vibe. But the owners are really great. It's a husband and wife couple, and they're doing great stuff there. It's just too expensive.
What type of cuisine is it?
It fits into that unfortunate category of New American.
So descriptive.
Scandinavian influenced, because that's where the chef's distant relatives are from. They started serving their first thing that a lot of local food people loved were abelskivers. I think I'm pronouncing that wrong, but these little, Scandinavian kind of like fried dough balls. And the menu changes all the time, and they do some really fun stuff with the presentation of it and pairing drinks, and it's just a whole interactive experience. It's kind of like theater.
Okay, let me think. Obviously, I would say I really like Noisette in Lohi. It's a French restaurant that recently opened. I think it was last year or late 2021. And the owners are really lovely, Tim and Lillian. They're like so nice. So I would say there, but I also very, very much like taking people to Chinese restaurants that are not Chinese, because I like explaining Chinese food to non-Chinese people, because I love talking, obviously. And I would say one of my favorite Chinese restaurants in town is called Meet and Eat Bistro. It's in Hampton, so it's pretty close to Aurora, but not quite. And their Sichuan food is, from the places that I've tried, I would consider the most traditional, or the one, like, they have something called dry pot. It's kind of like the flavors of hot pot, but there's not that much liquid. And so you can get fried fish or cauliflower in there. And I remember when I tried it for the first time, I was like, oh, this tastes like China. Like, this tastes like something that I ate in China. And I love that feeling personally. It's like, we all have the things that we grew up on, and like, it's so amazing when that hits, something hits that like sweet spot, and I would love to take as many people there as possible, just so they can learn that part of me.
What was the restaurant again, sir?
It's Meet and Eat Bistro.
Meet and Eat.
Yeah, you can meet me and then eat food.
That sounds great.
Where is it?
It's like in Hampton. It's sort of just like southeast Denver. Yeah.
I hope y'all have 30 minutes. My first recommendation, if we're in Denver, Hop Alley is my favorite. They have a lot of spicy foods, but then they also have some that kind of tame down those flavors and have cooling aspects. They do a lot of natural and biodynamic wines. The sommelier there is a lot of fun. It's a kind of a lively atmosphere. They play hip hop music. And so it's just a vibrant scene that's kind of going on. Some could describe it as like organized chaos, in that it's an open kitchen so you can see everything happening and they're running plates everywhere. I love that place. You said no, there is no price point, so it doesn't matter at all. Can we teleport? Because if we can teleport, I want to take us all up to the Yampa Valley. There's a place called Elkstone Farm. There's a chef up there named Russell Goodman, and he's using every piece of produce is from their farm, as is the protein. So they're killing their cattle for your dinner. It's awesome. like melt in your mouth immaculate. And it's a private ranch. The person that owns it had been offered billions of dollars to sell it so that they could develop it just on the backside of Main Street outside of Steamboat, but they just said, no, go pound sand. And so they've instead created this huge farm. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the summer and autumn, they have a little farm stand that people pull up from Steamboat, and you go down this country road and you can just pick up and shop whatever you want. And it looks like one of those like picking up your kids from school lines, because everyone's just anxiously waiting for the gates to be opened. If money does not matter, then I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least think about Aspen. Bosque just got a Michelin star. Little Nell has had more, top tier chefs run through there than, I'm sure there's a perverse joke there that I missed, but at the same time, Aspen's a great place to visit if you don't have to pay for anything. So that would be my third recommendation. But if we're hanging out here in Denver, Hop Alley is one of my favorites. You can either start the night or end the night at the little seedy dive bar across the street called Embassy Tavern that has cheap domestic beers, wonderful pickle shots, and the staff are all, and the patrons as well, are all usually hospitality industry folk that have come from fine dining or work in it and just need a reprieve and a cold beverage. It's a lot of fun, and obviously I think a lot of folks know that Rhino's foot traffic, it's better than most, so you can kind of go see the art, you can show folks a little bit of the taste of the city, but if we have any choice, it's those three in some capacity.
I love that. So now we're open to audience questions, so if you have one, all right, right here.
I think Josie and Kip both talked about just going down the street, finding a restaurant. So what draws you into a restaurant as you're walking by? Is there something that is it the smell, is it the look, is it some vague vibe?
It's the line of people outside of it, and as long as they don't look like me. So if I'm looking for a taco truck, you don't want Kip in line. You want someone, you want those folks. And I mean, we joke about $5 tacos, and Kike's is pretty close to that, but the fact that they still get, everybody in the city wants that lunch speaks volumes to them. But I love places like the Via Real. It's like a food truck in like an abandoned building off Alameda and Federal. And every time I drive by it, there's like 7 people in line. I'm like, there's something good over there today. And it's always something of that nature. The Far East Center too, shout out to Viet Cafe. Another chef put me on something like that. They're like, just kind of go down there and give it a whirl. I mean, I don't have a large frame of reference for what a great dumpling may be like Ethan. So I'm out there to try them all, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so what's $15 is kind of my mindset. I do it for a living, so it's a little bit different, but when you're shopping the affordable price range, I'll give anything a whirl. And oftentimes strip malls have the best, and those that certainly don't have marketing or PR firms definitely have the best, because they're focusing all on like investing in their family's food and all of the authentic, like paying rent in a strip mall. Those places get my vote every single time. Havana Street as well. Shout out to Soul Mandu.
I feel like I'm not good at this because I'm deeply indecisive all the time, so not very good at it. But what I will say, I think is two underrated factors about restaurants that I don't think people sometimes think about. A is just the amount of people in there, but like how many people do you want there? I like a medium crowd where I don't feel like I'm totally alone and every person in the working there is staring at me, but I also don't want it to be packed personally. And sort of going off of that, noise level. I cannot stand a restaurant where it's just total clamor and inside there's, I love it when they have a curtain or a rug, and then it just eats up all of this conversation, and I love that. So not what I think of, I would say, when I walk past a place, but I will say if I walk past a restaurant and it's I can hear the conversations from inside, outside, I personally would steer clear.
I mean, our city's a driving city for the most part, but I think personally, I love when I've just arrived in a neighborhood or am visiting a place and staying in a neighborhood where I can walk around. And oftentimes, the places that I'm drawn to don't have huge signs or banners or loud music, and I'm looking for ambiance mostly to get in, and maybe it's just a cozy feeling. It's a home away, which is what you get when you travel and you're looking for restaurants, but I think it's also a nice way to do that in your own neighborhood too. So I love driving to a strip mall or somewhere farther away as well, but I also just love walking around in my own neighborhood.
Follow-up question, what's your favorite restaurant in your neighborhood? Besides Potager, you can't say that twice.
So let's let Dana answer. I'll think about it.
I'm very curious.
Give me a sec. I don't care about entrees, and so I'm grateful for. I know it's stupid, right? I will eat them, but whatever. I like it when they post a menu that tells me what the side dishes are going to be, because I really think that the side dish execution makes or breaks a meal. So.
Wow. I believe you also had a question. Yeah.
I'm fairly new to Denver, and I'm looking for an Afghan restaurant. I haven't found one.
Isn't our Afghan people just?
She's looking for an Afghan restaurant. If you could not hear that.
I think it might be a little bit difficult right now just to find exactly that. I will say for me, it's in some of the reporting that I've done recently, I've been looking for specifically North African restaurants, and there are very, very few of those around, like Moroccan food and stuff like that. And so I think right now the Middle Eastern scene here is pretty sort of hits the general vibe, you know, that general Middle Eastern menu,
Yeah,
but.
I Google it, I get all these Lebanese.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that is one part here that like there might not be as much movement, but.
There's one Afghan restaurant, very small, not atmospheric. The first word in it is shawarma.
Okay.
Oh.
Chwarma. I think it's in somewhere south, sort of suburban.
Get up here. You need
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's like.
So,
Is it the Shawarma Shack? Does that sound right? Wasn't a shack. Not a shack.
we're Googling right now.
We'll see.
But it's real Afghan. It's absolutely Afghan food, kebab and
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Hi, I was late coming to the seminar. I wonder if you had addressed vegan food at all. I'm a vegan.
Yeah.
I wake up every morning deciding, oh my God, there's 10 different choices. Where do I go? And I'm wondering if you guys have visited vegan restaurants, what you feel about them, what your favorite is.
I mean, Ethan also already shouted out one.
Yeah, Ethan had a recommendation, and I think this one, we didn't touch on this before, but it's an exciting time to be a vegan diner in Denver right now. There's a lot of good stuff. Somebody People is one of my favorites. Somebody People on Broadway, and then what was the one that you had just?
I referenced Easy Vegan, and they're.
Yes,
You already know. You're already plugged in.
they won the championship.
Yes, this is it.
I would also throw in Fellow Traveler right there on South Broadway in Inglewood. They've garnered a lot of attention from print media. I think they won best, I don't know, Westwards, maybe best vegan spot. Don't hold me to that, but I think so. That one's a pretty solid spot, but like y'all said, it's a. Is it? Damn it.
There's also a vegan sushi restaurant.
Oh, that's right.
What's that one? called?
Wellness sushi.
Wellness Sushi. You've had that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
Yep. Love that place. You. Yeah, no, honestly, Wellness Sushi is a really, really solid place for like anybody, regardless if you're a vegan. I would also say like look for the cuisines that are naturally vegan. There's so many places that like if you go to an Ethiopian restaurant and you get a veggie combo, it will be vegan. You know what I mean? Like they just don't use dairy and eggs a lot in those sorts of meals. And so you can go to like a Chinese or an Ethiopian place and like very easily find a lot of excellent vegan options. Well, actually, I take that back. Chinese places, they love putting little bits of meat in everything. I apologize. I feel for all the plant-based people that they have been done dirty by that. But, you know, if they're good about it, then they'll be good.
All right, I think we have a question right here.
So I'm thinking of a response and like an option. So I work for a foundation, and twofold, the cake bar is a wonderful vegan.
Yes.
They made the gal that owns it, her little black woman, best birthday cake my friend had. She can test for it, but it was all vegan, gluten free. It's great. But think about, so there's so many great nonprofits, Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, Center for Community Wealth Building. They have been working, they work with people that are entrepreneurs or want to become entrepreneurs, give them the training on how to run a business, and then provide them seed funding to start their businesses. They have so many restaurateurs who definitely specialize in ethnic food. And their whole point is to help individuals from low-income communities, BIPOC, in helping them start businesses and address these very prevalent gaps, especially around the food here.
Does Mango House have
Yeah.
Afghan in
I
it?
don't think, no, I don't know.
It's-
Maybe.
I don't think it's Afghan. It's kind of like in that camp that he was talking about earlier, how it's kind of like a regional food, like the urban Burma is over there. I was over there not too terribly long ago, so when you're thinking about, that's what I was wondering as well. But I think that one's more like regional instead of just.
What was the name again of the organization?
So Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, Center for Community Wealth Building, and they've worked with some other groups, including funders, to start Shop BIPOC, which is the website's launched, but it's all promoting BIPOC-owned businesses, and I believe restaurants are one of the categories out there too.
See?
I wanted to add something about the Easy Vegan. You know, they won the food challenge food truck on Food Network. They got $50,000 as a result. And for looking for brick and mortar in the city and county of Denver, they're going to get another $30,000. So they're looking for brick and mortar now. Yay!
Man, that is
No,
awesome.
Easy Vegan, like they're in their moment. It's great food truck races the show, and like they're so nice too, and yeah, I love it.
They actually, I did a show with them, and they recommended Gladys. It's a food Gladys in the food hall in Edgewater. They have it's like a root vegetable Reuben that I think I saw the Lord after I had it, and then the fried artichokes as well were divine. And I mean, obviously, we're talking different ranges of food all day today. They also highly recommended Uchi's vegan menu and Hop Alley. Both have great vegan. Oh, never mind. I'm just kidding.
Okay, Uchi sells foie gras.
But those were just, they had recommended them to me because we try to do a meat-free Monday. So I'm just learning. I don't know, but never mind. Screw Uchi.
Oh. All right, we have a question back here. Yeah.
I love it. You're my new favorite.
We talked about food trucks and new acting options, vegan options. I love a good food truck, but trying to find them outside of a farmer's market or some of the 6 or 8 type things, which sometimes people can't afford to pay into those. What would you recommend on how to find a good food truck? Because you usually have to know an Instagram or know someone who knows someone who's talked about it. So how do you find good food trucks?
Truckster has started to pick up a little more steam here. It was an app that started out of Austin, Texas, which is also very prevalent for their food truck scene down there. And it's started to do pretty well. They have an app so you can kind of see who all's on it. Obviously, not everyone, I don't know what their pay-to-play game is, but they have a litany of different options. And they actually will work with you as well if you host private events or things of that nature. So if you wanted to have a food truck at a wedding reception or at I don't know, a panel of stoner idiots. You could have them sit outside, but you could dictate what you want. That's what I've kind of started using, but also the person that's supposed to be here and I'm sitting in for him, his name's Chris Byard. He's fairly knowledgeable. I know him for about 11 years now and sit down with him about 3 times a week. He writes a weekly blog on the Westward about, we call it Food Truck Friday, and I think everyone in America does. But he kind of does a profile on different foods and different chefs from around the community. And that's a fun way to kind of, like Josie was saying, get to know who you're eating with, or maybe just finding something that tickles your pickle.
I hate to plug my magazine, but we did a big food truck feature in March. So that is one spot to start. But I would also say a lot of, how do I put this? A lot of food trucks are run by people and it's just them. And so they don't have a ton of marketing, right? And, you know, and you'll like go on their Facebook page and it's just like straight up their personal cell, like on the Facebook page. And like I recently had to contact a food truck because I'm hoping to go soon. And I would say it's like search up whatever you like the whatever you could think of, you know, vegan food truck, Kenyan food truck, like something, Senegalese food truck, like Burmese food truck. There's very likely one in town, and hopefully they're good, and it's more about tracking down where they are. That's like the actual hurdle sometimes, is just putting that call, like dialing them. But otherwise, I would say like, yeah, just Google cuisine food truck.
Is there a stretch of like roads that tend to have better food trucks?
Ooh, there's a map. There's a map. Yeah, there's like, it is a very, very complicated legal thing of where food trucks can park. So I cannot say specifically, but there is a map for people to find.
I do think this question is leading one of you, Ethan, you're probably going to have to take the fall of creating a story that guides people to where they can find them.
I'm so always lost though. Like, I'm not good with directions.
This is such a question for the person that should be in my chair that I feel awkward right now. So
Text him and find out.
I will. I'll give you his info before we leave. He'll help you out on that. We're a community. We're supposed to be here together and let's support local restaurants.
I was also going to suggest my hometown is a little weird, so auto parts parking lots have some of the best taco trucks in the city, and I can't tell you the name of any of them because they don't have names on them. It's like taco, like or whatever, and they make lunch and they're amazing. So I just would encourage you to try those out and not be. And they're it's a low point of entry, and hot sauce is.
Okay, unfortunately, this is our time. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I hope you had a good time. All of these people are always welcome to, you can ask them even more questions or more restaurant names afterward. But thank you so much.